In 2000, we bought an abandoned 100-acre farm in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. We spent years cleaning it up, built a new house, and now are trying to make it a functional homestead farm. Welcome to Red Tool House.
Hello everybody, welcome to Red Tool House. I'm Troy, this is Kelly.
Hello.
And today in this video we want to talk about homeschooling. Should homesteaders be homeschooling, Kel?
No.
That's right, forget it. Next video, please. Obviously that question really isn't a fair question. It's not like you can lump everybody into the same bucket. So no, I don't think it's fair to say if you homestead that you have to be homeschooling. If you homestead and you have your kids in public school or private school or whatever, then to each his own, that's fine. If you've ever considered homeschooling and maybe you're a little apprehensive, we want to do this video to encourage you to look into it and to give it a shot. Don't feel that you can't do it because of inadequacies or inabilities or you're just too scared, you don't know where to start. So what we wanted to do is we really wanted to talk about 3 key reasons we decided to homeschool. So let's do a little history here first so people know where we're coming from. We have 2 boys, 16 and 12. Both boys have been homeschooled all of their lives. So if we back up to when our oldest, Liam, was ready to start school, we had him enrolled to start school in the fall in a private school, in our Christian school for our church.
And we had talked about homeschooling in the past. It was something that I was familiar with. My mom had homeschooled a couple of my siblings for several years. So it was something that I knew about, but we had talked about it, and it just wasn't for you.
Well, yeah, and that's a good point. If you look at it, our decision to homeschool wasn't that somebody sat in front of us and said, "Hey, have you guys considered homeschooling?" And we're like, "Oh wow, we never thought of that. Yeah, high five, let's homeschool." That's not how it worked out for us. Kelly actually came to me and said, "I think I'd like to consider homeschooling Liam instead of enrolling him."
Actually, I think it went like this. What do you think of homeschooling our kids? I don't think I said I want to. I just said, what do you think about it?
What was my response to that? Do you remember?
No way.
Yeah, I don't believe I was completely on board with that idea. And it's funny because looking back, the reason why I was immediately said no, my knee-jerk reaction was no, there's no way, is because I was only speaking from experiences I had. I knew 2 people that were homeschooled growing up, and they were weirdos. At least I thought they were. Again, it's all about perspective. Maybe I was the weirdo. But I'm like, well, no, I don't. They were socially introverted. They were just kind of odd. I don't think that's what we want to do. Homeschool kids are kids that have issues, right? So my ignorance there was showing. So we didn't come to this consensus of, yeah, let's homeschool. But it was kind of neat. It was a neat point in our lives where we both were like, well, we ought to explore this. Let's talk about it. I'm not pig-headed where I'm going to stick my foot down and say, no, absolutely not. And Kelly wasn't pig-headed where she slammed her foot down and said, yes, we are. We both agreed, well, let's research. Let's see what we can do to look at this and both keep open minds about it.
And so we contacted a couple at church that were homeschooling their teenage daughter and asked if we could go to dinner with them and just talk to them about homeschooling. What was their experience? Were they all, thrilled that that's what they chose? And so we went to dinner with them, and they gave us so much good information. And their daughter was not with them at dinner. It was just the parents' meeting. But she had sent a message with her mom saying, tell him to do it, just tell him to do it. So we left that dinner with a lot more information than we started with, and excited that this was a possibility.
So I believe over the course of several months, you and I came to a consensus about homeschooling, and how do we decide to go ahead and give it a shot?
I think your words were, well, it's only kindergarten. How much could we mess up?
That's right, exactly. You either color within the lines or you don't. How badly can you screw that up?
Yes.
So
with that confidence,
that's right. Yeah, Kelly, I don't think you can muck this up too badly. Let's give it a shot. No, and what was neat about that is, granted, we looked at it from a kindergarten base. Okay, if it's kindergarten and this crashes and burns and we have a horrible situation, the next year we put him in school. Yeah. But that's really been the attitude. Would you say it's been the attitude going forward, right?
Yeah, our first year of kindergarten, I mean, it was great. We had a great time, and I was learning, all about homeschooling. We didn't know that we were going to homeschool that year until like maybe the month before. And so I didn't have a lot of time ahead of time to put together a curriculum. Again, it's only kindergarten, but so that year I learned a lot. And, I was able to see, is this going to be something that works for us? Is my son going to be responsive? Are we going to be able to continue this? And so from then on, it's just been, we've taken it year by year, and each year we pray about it. Lord, is this what you want for our children, for our family? Are we doing the right thing? Is this good for us? And so each year we've just continued on.
Yeah.
And like he said, our oldest is in 10th grade this year, so we've been continuing each year since then.
So as Liam was coming to the age of it's time to start school, we had to really stop and do an assessment at that point, because we needed to make a decision. What are we going to do with our child's education? And during that time, it really came down to 3 key points. And there's 3 points we want to talk about as to why we chose to homeschool our kids. Point number 1 had everything to do with geography and what our options were in our county. As we've mentioned, some of you that follow the channel for a long time, we live rural in southern West Virginia. So the school system at that time was in a pretty bad shape, the public school system in this county. The state board had taken over. The county was doing so poorly that the state board had to take over. And again, there was a lot of politics, and I don't want to bash the county system. We just thought, do we really want our son in this system? The second option we had, of course, was private school. We'd mentioned that we were ready. We had him enrolled. We hadn't paid our tuition yet, but we had him enrolled into private school at a Christian school for our church. So it was one of those deals where, can we really afford to do this right now? And it was going to require a major lifestyle choice for us. We were going to have to change a lot of things to be able to afford that education. And of course, the third option was homeschooling. So we looked at that and said, okay, private school, super expensive, lifestyle change, public school system, not really where we want it to be right now. And of course, being rural, you have to look at all the things that go along with that. I mean, not even talking about the quality of education, the other issues we ran into were...
Well, he would be on a school bus for a long period of time to get to school and back home again each day.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking hours on the school bus each day. And as a kid growing up rural, I remember that, and that sucked. You had to get up at 5 in the morning to be able to catch the bus, and then you didn't get home to about 4:30 or 5 o'clock because the bus had to drive all over God's creation to be able to get to your house, which seemed to always be the last on the route. We knew we didn't want him on the school bus that long, and just other factors there that said, okay, public school, not going to be a choice, so we eliminated that. So that was really the first reason that we looked at. It's like, what are other options? And when we weighed those and looked at them, okay, homeschooling came to the top. Well, the second reason really kind of falls into kind of the homesteading mentality. And like I said, we weren't homesteading at the time, but we really wanted to be directly responsible for our child's education. And that allowed us to have the freedom to roll out certain things at certain times. We had the ability to introduce both of our boys to different things at different times, as opposed to being in a more structured setting with a public school. We didn't want to send our kids somewhere else to be and have somebody else be responsible for teaching our kid everything that matters. How to become an adult, how to become a responsible member of society. We felt really compelled and really burdened to be doing that ourselves. We need to teach Liam, we need to teach Camlin how to do these things, how to learn these things. So that really weighed heavily on us. And as we first getting started with kindergarten, it may not have been that obvious, but as we went along, it really started to reveal itself.
Yes.
And I think really it made an impression on us that there's a lot of power and a lot of responsibility in educating a child. And those can go in all kinds of different ways, and influences can direct a child one way or the other. So it just made sense to us as their parents. We're responsible for them, everything else, providing meals, clothing, shelter. Why not be responsible for their education? So as we progressed in those years, it just made more sense and just resonated better with us. So really the third reason is the biggest reason. We wanted to have the flexibility and the opportunity to expand educational opportunity for our boys. There's just so much freedom with homeschooling that allows you to go in so many different directions. And I've heard you talk about all the time, wow, I just wish there were enough hours in the day to do all this stuff we want to do.
Well, and like you said about the last point, I think a lot of this revealed itself as the years went on of the flexibility that we had. And yeah, there's just so many different things that we want to tap into to learn this or learn that. And they can go with their own interests and bring that, into the schoolroom, something that they might be really interested in that maybe we don't know much about. So, it's been great.
Yeah, if you think about, if we unpack that statement about flexibility, what does that mean? Well, it doesn't just mean that Kelly can sleep in and start school late because she doesn't want to get up. That's one of the benefits, but it is a driving force. No, it really means that when you look at how this information, how this education is going to be passed on to our children, how do we deliver that? Mm-hmm. In a public school setting, most public school settings, you have a very structured process. You think of class size, teacher to student ratio, all that's a big deal because you're in a structured setting, you're in class for X amount of time, the teacher's trying to cover enough material to make it to where she needs to make it, these benchmarks. But she or he is trying to move 15 to 25 kids along at the same pace. So it provides a very structured process, whereas when it's just Kelly and one boy or Kelly and two boys homeschooling, then we have the ability to really go in different directions. So sometimes homeschooling means that, yes, a child is sitting at a table or a desk and they're going through a written curriculum of something. Or other times it may mean that, no, they're hanging out on the couch and they're doing some reading, they're doing some discussion, they're doing some reading comprehension type stuff. Or we could be at camp sitting around a fire doing homeschooling, doing education, because we have that flexibility.
Or we could be working on the farm.
Exactly. I mean, again, there's a lot of biology, there's a lot of physics, there's a lot of mechanics that comes out of just homesteading, and those are all teachable moments. A walk through the woods is a really good botany lesson. And also looking at a classroom setting, we knew we could pace the boys differently. And we discovered that we have two very different boys when it comes to education. Different learning styles, different interests. There's only 4 years difference between them, but they are night and day at times. And our oldest, Liam, was reading at 2 years old. It was kind of scary when he started reading that early. We were like, uh-oh, we got something here. We got to get tested and checked out. But he did so well and accelerated so fast that we thought, he's going to get bored if he's in a structured setting and he's already ahead of the kids in this reading area. So, and I think you pointed that out, that we need to make sure he stays challenged. So when it came to reading, bang, let's advance, let's move forward. So, kindergarten.
Yeah, so we didn't have to, stay at the level that a typical kindergarten or first grader or second grader or third grader would stay at. He could just go and move along at his own pace.
Yeah, and then, Camlin came along 4 years later, and when it came to reading, it was pretty much the opposite. He did not show any interest in it. He was very reluctant. He had a hard time with it. And
it was definitely a struggle, but it was something that, I had learned that you don't want to push in any area that they're struggling with if you want them to enjoy it. And so I had a friend, a few years before who, her son was just so struggling with reading and just very disappointed. And I just told her, because I had read it recently, take a break. Just take a break. And put it down for a little while, move on with something else that he really enjoys, and then pick it up later. And they did that, and she, has told me since then that, that was just so freeing because he enjoys reading now. I mean, you don't have to just keep forcing. And so with our second son, it wasn't something that was easy for him. And so we just went at his pace. We just did a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. And I had read that, you know what, they don't have to be reading by a certain, 5, 6, 7 years old. And so he really wasn't until he was probably 8. And, but he enjoyed it more because I think that's the reason, is because it wasn't an issue that we forced on a daily basis. Yeah,
and again, I don't want to get negative, but just imagine at 8 years old in a structured system, the labels that would have been assigned to him and how he would have been categorized and put in these certain slow areas, okay, remedial type of things, and it would have labeled him, and it would have caused, I think, issues on down the road. Well, now he's 12 years old. I mean, kid loves to read. I mean, he's not running around grabbing books and saying, oh, I got to read this. He'd much rather do other stuff, but he doesn't hate reading. He doesn't run away from the idea. He actually enjoys sitting down and reading stories and being a part of that. So, to me, that is a success just in itself. With the opportunity to homeschool, one thing that we've discovered over the past 11 years is we get to choose when our kids get to learn certain subjects. And something that Kelly and I have just discovered over the past several years is the way we structured our homeschooling. It really allowed us to maintain the innocence of our children longer. And not everybody's going to agree with this, but I think kids are not allowed to be kids very long anymore. I think children are forced to mature, to grow up, to learn certain things, or to become more worldly, in a sense, to learn more worldly things than really they need to at that time. So we've discovered over the past several years that our boys, somebody may call it sheltered or naive. I don't know that I would necessarily say naive, because we make a conscious effort to now, as they're teenagers, to instruct them on, hey, this is the way the world really works. It's not rainbows and unicorns. This is how things really happen. So I believe they have that education, but we've been able to preserve that innocence. And when it came time for things like what's wrong with the world, why do people kill one another, sex education, all these different things, we had full control over that. We got to choose how that got rolled out and when it got rolled out. So I didn't have to worry about Liam coming home and saying, hey, Bobby brought a magazine to school, now I have all kinds of questions. I had full control over that, and I love it. So we've had some people point out to us, well, your son's not the typical 16-year-old.
And our response to that is, that's not such a bad thing.
Yeah, we've kind of learned to take that as a compliment, because, and again, I can only go from experience. I remember what I was like at 16. I was a jerk. I was a jerk to my parents. I had the typical cliche teenager attitude, didn't want to be seen with them, thought I was better than them, thought I was smarter than them, all of that foolishness. And there was always this going on with my parents and I, this animosity, this challenging of authority. And I don't have that. I love hanging out with my 16-year-old. He's extremely respectful. He's got a great sense of humor. He cracks me up constantly. He's got a great positive attitude, where I had the worst attitude in the world. So I just love the fact that he's not a jerk like I was. And he knows how to interact with older people. Just a really good kid. And of course, he's my kid, so I'm going to say that, but I'm just really impressed with that. And I'm seeing that with my 12-year-old as well. So when people say, well, he's not a typical 16-year-old, I think, well, if a typical 16-year-old is anything like the way I was when I was 16, then I'm okay with that. In fact, I'd prefer that. So we really like what we've seen with the boys so far. And again, what is the measure of success when it comes to education? Again, you can say, well, I've got a degree, I've got this, I've got that. And again, we're not shunning college. We're not saying our kids aren't going to college. But really, what is education all about? Education is teaching our kids to learn. And I think that's the key. As Kelly goes through this every day, it's not, hey, I need to make sure you know this fact or you know this specific point. It's really giving them the tools to learn and have a desire to learn all of their lives.
Yes, definitely. We want to, that's our main goal, is to encourage them to be lifelong learners.
Yeah, so when you look at it from a homesteading perspective and say, well, I've learned more in the past 7, 8 years that we've been doing this. I've learned more in that time span than I ever could have learned in college. If I'd have spent 8 years in college doing all kinds of different courses, I would not have learned as much as I've learned since trying to take on these homesteading efforts. So to me, that would be the measure of success. If my boys grow to be adults and they go out in the world and do whatever they're going to do with their lives, but they have this constant thirst for knowledge, and they're able to learn, they know how to learn, they know how to find information, to try something, then to me that's the measure of success. And not be afraid of learning. I remember a boss that I had one time, he said when he was done with college, he remembered when he graduated from college that he was stoked that he never had to read another book. And he said, I swore at that point I would never read another book because I was done with learning. And I think back to that and think, man, that's terrible. I would never want to have that attitude. And to me, I hope my boys never would either.
Okay, I think we're getting a little too deep. Let's wrap it up.
Getting into the philosophizing going on here.
So that was our 3 reasons for choosing to homeschool. And if you have been considering homeschooling or just thinking about it, we want to wholeheartedly encourage you to look into it and to give it a try. Like I said, we are in our 11th year. We are learning more every year about homeschooling itself, not just my kids learning, but learning about homeschooling itself. And so you're always going to be learning while you're homeschooling, so just jump in, and you're probably going to have to make some changes along the road, but until you tweak it to exactly what you need. But we want to encourage you to take that step.
Yeah, and if you think, I don't know where to start, I'm not smart enough, I don't know that I have the patience to do it, if there's those type of fear issues that are keeping you from doing it, then I say just unpack those, just challenge each of those fears, and just start, as Kelly said, just start doing the research. Give it a shot. If your kid's in kindergarten, again, what are you going to screw up? He's just going to color. Well, anyway, we hope this was useful to some of you that have talked to us about homeschooling. If you like this video about homeschooling and would like to see some more detailed discussion on homeschooling from us, leave a comment below. Again, we're trying to figure out what is interesting to you all. So if you'd like to have us explore homeschooling a little bit more, then just let us know below.
So if you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel if you haven't, and check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Red Tool House Farm.
Take care.